The Joe Budden podcast. Okay, it was inevitable. This was going to happen at some point. Marc Lamont beefs with Flip. Now, one thing I can say about the show and the way that it's going, I think Joe's podcast is now more of a love and hip hop sort of thing now. The way that they're producing it is all about storylines. It's not so much about the conversations that they have now. I think where they are podding so much and they're putting in so many episodes, you notice now, in order to have more things to talk about, I think Joe is allowing too much BS to go on the show, to be honest with you. Because if you really think about it, Flip was brought on there to kind of give the podcast a bit of energy, some humour, get it a little bit more fun, comical, a little bit crazy here and there, which was fine. However, when Marc Lamont came in, he came in as like one of the elders, especially someone who is well established in the sense of all of the stuff that he did prior to coming to the podcast. He was always viewed in a certain sort of light. Now, the thing about when you're on podcasts and you're podcasting for so long, the atmosphere within the actual show is, to a certain extent, a lot of banter, right? A lot of back and forth, couple of jokes here, couple of jokes there, and that's what it's kind of been. But when it comes to jokes and disrespect, sometimes people always use jokes as a way to get off some sort of disrespect when they might want to be disrespectful towards you, but they might have a little jab here and there. Now, one of the things is, when it comes to disrespect, just because someone's educated doesn't mean they can't be disrespectful. And I think Marc punches down on Flip a lot when it comes to Flip not being smart. And, you know, Flip doesn't have to be smart. He's not there to be smart. He's there because of his personality and his energy. But I think after a while, Marc's been playing too much in terms of the way he's interacted with his peers on there. So even though Flip is younger than him, he's still engaging in those back and forths with Flip. And my whole thing is that when you get to a certain level, like when you're used to busting jokes with people, as long as you open that door to bust jokes with them, whatever they say to you in a joking manner, you have to kind of ride with it. I do think Marc overreacted today. I think he clearly overreacted today because for the simple fact is, Flip just made a comment in saying like, the way you're acting is like this. I think he called him a cornball. I can't remember what he called him, right? But it was along those lines, and Marc got extremely upset. And even though they was having a bit of a heated back and forth, Flip said to him, listen, I'm not calling you it, but I'm saying if you keep moving like that, that's what I'm going to call you. Now, I guess that was the line where Marc had had enough. And the thing is, him and Flip have been arguing back and forward, like for the last, I think, as soon as Marc got comfortable on the show, that's when you started to notice him and Flip kept arguing back and forth, just constant. But at the same time, it's just like, you've decided to engage in those sorts of activities and those sorts of behaviours with Flip. And everybody knows what Flip's like. Flip is Flip. You know, he's known for being a certain type of way. You know, he was on the show before you. You already seen how he acts. So when you come onto the show, you can make a decision and say you are going to engage or you're not going to engage. Like, for instance, if you take a look at Ish, like Ish jokes with Flip, but then Ish will get to a certain point where Flip might go too far with him And you see, Ish would just cut it out. He knows he's not going to go further with Flip. He'll tell Flip or look at Flip in a certain type of way, like, listen, that's enough, and move on. But I think like Marc hasn't really laid out any boundaries in terms of what people can talk about and what people can't talk about, or what you're going to joke with or not. Now, I think this was some real clown stuff, man, because at the end of the day is, how can you be working with someone on a pod? Yeah, on a podcast, you're probably on one of the most successful podcasts. You make fun of Adam 22 and, you know, how they handle their stuff on the other coast and how they interact with each other and how there's always this drama, this and that. But now you guys are talking about going outside to do what? Like, you're talking about like fighting your co-hosts about what? Like, what are you fighting over? Like, you know, he made a joke. You didn't like it. You told him you didn't like the joke. And he turned around and he said to you, all right, cool. I'm not calling you that, but I'm saying if you move a certain type of way, then that's how I'm going to take it. And if you really think about it, Marc is always making fun of Flip. Flip is making fun of Marc. So my whole thing is, it's just like, it's a bit ridiculous. I blame Joe on this as well, you know, because like Joe's got to get to a point where he has a clear view of what he wants his pod to be. Now, if Joe, because obviously no one knows what Joe's plan is in terms of his podcast, right? Nobody knows. But if Joe wants to go down the love and hip hop route of having a podcast where you have all of these storylines that are happening outside of the pod. You know, you've got the Twitter spaces where you're going in and you're having a back and forth with Danny from the Stop, and you're doing all of this extra stuff outside of your pod. And now you want to fill your pod with less about the conversations, what people were literally coming to your pod for, you know, about different topics, because you lot have a very interesting view on certain things. So that's why people are coming there. I just think when people are starting to chase in views and you're looking at numbers and you're just focusing on numbers, you start to go away from what people actually came to your show for. So I totally blame Joe for this. Also, another thing, Joe said, look, I'm not cutting the pod. So this might be one of those things where we were just not privy to this sort of behavior on the pod. Maybe this is something that's happened several times where Joe has decided to edit it out. And maybe that's the reason why maybe Joe might be fed up and he said, you know what, today I'm going to let it run. And if you guys want to be silly, it's going out. And I think that was his opportunity to be like, to tell him like, listen, you guys keep continuing. This is going out. But I think for Joe, he's got to protect his brand, man. Like, honestly, he's got to protect his brand. This is not a good look, because now he's really falling into that Adam 22 part of it, which doesn't make any sense whatsoever. It's like, what do you want your pod to be known as? You've got the view, you've got the ears. You literally can do whatever you want on that pod, but you're going down this sort of, you know, this drama-filled love and hip-hop sort of thing where it's not a good look, man. It really isn't a good look. This is one thing where I think Joe should have stepped in and just said to them, listen, you man, take a time out. Like, go over there, take a time out, you lot chill out, or even just cut it off. You know, just take a time out. Like, yo, you go for a walk, yo, go get a drink, or go have a smoke, or listen, go take a quick time out and just like really dead the conversation. Like, it's just not a good look, man. But overall, what do you think? Comment below if you made it this far. Do you think Joe needs to step in? And do you think the podcast is going down? Also, do you think Marc took it too seriously? And also, do you think Flip did anything wrong? Comment below, like, subscribe, and let me know what video you want me to react on. Peace.